Hello, ODAC fans, and welcome to a new type of content that we have for you with the 2021 ODAC Cross Country Roundtable. That's what we're calling it here. As I have 6 of our head coaches in the league with us, and Denver Davis from Bridgewater, Jake Reed from Lynchburg, Andy Marrocco from Shenandoah, Rebekah Ricksecker from Sweet Briar, and Brandon Spalding and Mike Dager from Washington and Lee. Coaches, thanks for joining me today.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
All right, as we hop into this, we're taking a look and doing it in this format here because it's been 2 years, really, the 2019 season, since we've had formal competition in the ODAC. And I think we're going to talk about where we were at this past year, really, if we're into the January and February months of trying to put things together. But there were efforts that were made to try to get cross country some competition out there because we knew that we were going to have a less than ideal indoor season as well. And then what the outdoor season, when we were planning all this, we weren't sure what it was going to look like. So trying to get all the sports in the ODAC from an AD's level and then from a coaching level where you're coming at is where we were with cross country, trying to get some sort of schedule in there. And I know just all of you were involved in this, but Brandon and Rebekah especially involved working through some of the details that we're going through with that. And Rebekah, you got to compete a couple times there against Randolph, and maybe a few other schools were mixed in. You know, coaches, I'll start with the two of you talking about the efforts that were made last year as we look to try and build some sort of schedule last spring.
Yeah, so I headed up a group of coaches. Andy was on it as well, Rebekah, as you mentioned, and trying to formulate a plan of what cross country could have looked like last winter. The plans were started last fall when no one was doing athletics, and I know other winter sports around the conference were starting planning phases of basketballs and then, kind of the redo of seasons. We wanted to make sure that we were mindful of a school like Sweet Briar that is cross country only and still being able to seek out an opportunity for those athletes. And ultimately, we kind of had a pod idea that was going to be relatively regional, but one of winter weather, but two, some schools that maybe thought they wouldn't compete in indoor track, but then did. So things ended up kind of falling apart in that regard as we all got a better picture of what the outdoor track season could be, and that kind of shifted everyone's focus. But a lot of the planning that went into it, I know, was helpful for schools like Randolph to host a couple cross country meets, and then as you mentioned, Rebekah at Sweet Briar to provide opportunities for her athletes.
Rebekah, what would you say off of that? Talk about the experience of being able to compete a little bit last spring.
Yeah, we were just super pumped to be able to race a few times. We raced 4 times against some ODAC schools. The first 2 at Randolph, and then we had a couple dual meets with Hollins here at Sweet Briar. And it was just a great opportunity. Both Hollins and the Sweet Briar squad had a lot of new athletes this past year. So we really just wanted to give them some opportunities to get some experience in cross country leading into this fall. And we just decided to keep it really small. That's why we hosted just a dual meet so that, we could really focus on, the social distancing protocols and just keeping it simple. Everyone was tested the day before. So yeah, it was just a great experience for the athletes. And Randolph hosted a couple of really great meets. They were both really, really well run. So enjoyed that experience. And I think it was a good setup leading into this fall.
So we're segueing into the fall a little bit, and unfortunately, COVID hasn't left us. Is there any holdover from what we were experiencing last spring, from what you guys were planning for, that you're seeing as when you're starting to prepare and in the meet information packets that you're getting from places? What are some of the things that the athletes should look forward to when they're coming in this year, aside from hopefully as having as more normal, if you will, of a fall campaign as they can? And that's open to any of you that would wish to comment.
I think thankfully we're an outdoor sport. So a lot of the restrictions that other sports are seeing, like volleyball, for instance, we don't have to deal with a lot of those things. Now, what our athletes are facing is some of the same restrictions in terms of transportation, travel, us facilitating accommodations for them and, where we're staying and things of that nature. But from a competition perspective, the restrictions aren't quite as harsh. And I know for some institutions, travel still can be an issue and how far away can we compete. But the overall experience at the meet, I don't think is going to be that much different.
Well, that's what we're hoping for as you all work through the fall campaign here. And obviously, one of the things that we're working for the first time in 2 years is getting to an ODAC championship. Now, there's several levels of that. You're going through all your workouts and then the meets you're going to go to, some of them more high profile than others, with the ODAC preview and the pre-national meet on the same weekend. And then we have the pre-regional championship, which is a couple weeks before that on the 18th of September. But when we get to the ODAC championship, we've got 2 opportunities to compete at the course of Bridgewater. And I'm going to look square at Denver Davis here for this one from Bridgewater. And we've got that option here of you giving us a bit of an idea of what the course is going to look like, how it compares to the last time the Eagles hosted the ODAC championship.
Well, I can tell you this, for those of you that were here the last time we hosted, I think it was 14. Not much has changed. So there'll be some familiarity for coaches that have been in the conference for a little bit. But I'll go ahead and share the maps here with you guys so you can get a look at what we've got going on. It's super spectator friendly looping course. So we can start here with the men's course. It does loop around our soccer practice fields and intramural field area over on the other side of campus. We have a very open 200-meter straightaway for our starting area here, this first stretch coming down. The men get onto the main loop, which thankfully we've been able to get to 1,600 meters on the nose. I've wheeled it a couple of times already, and we feel pretty confident about that. Where it's at, the men stay on the outer loop. They do 5 laps, and on the 5th one coming around, they come around here behind the finish line, behind the starting line, and turn right into the finish and finish up along the edge of the starting area. So it's pretty straightforward for the guys. There's no surprises, no weird turns, no weird places to go. Coaches and spectators will have a really easy time because all of the mile marks are in the same area. You literally can have somebody stand in one spot, catch all the mile splits. I know Blue Ridge Timing's excited as well. They can have one single mat out. It's going to make the live scoring, the live place piece for them in the results online super easy for them to handle and manage. So it's going to add another good layer for coaches to get some real-time information, and certainly for fans to see in real time what's happening during the race. The course is all grass, and it's relatively flat. We've got no road crossings, no gravel, no any weird things like that going on it. I think that's a little unique. We found out in 2014 that despite it not having a ton of elevation and being all grass, it's not as fast as you would think. It's deceivingly challenging in that regard. It's very much, like running on a track. There's no uphills, downhills to kind of catch yourself on, to recover yourself on, to help push your rhythm a little bit. We do have a couple turns that are in here that will serve as kind of miniature rhythm breakers, but we don't have any, hard rights, hard lefts, anything like that. Certainly no obstacles out there in the way at all. So, and when we hosted in 2014, it was great to see people just running all over the place and really being able to watch the entire race. There's not an instance where you're out there that you can't see the runners. Nobody disappears into any wooded areas or anything, so there's no surprises at any point. You get a really good chance to coach your athletes, and for fans, a really good chance to watch the actual entire race develop. The women's course, similar to the men's, starting area and finish area are going to be exactly the same. The women are going to start out on an inner loop, as you can see here, following the orange. So they'll start back here in the corner, come across the field. They'll pick up this orange loop and cut between our soccer fields here and drop back down. That's about 1,000-meter loop to start for them. So that pushes their 1,600-meter, their mile marks up here onto this corner where all three are, again, going to be located. So after they do the initial inner loop, their second, third, and fourth laps will be on the same outer loop that the men will run. And same as the men, they'll come off on their last loop behind the starting line and finish up into the field in the same area. So again, pretty straightforward, pretty easy to navigate for folks. And we're just looking forward to hosting another good championship. here at Bridgewater, and we've got indoor space for awards and other things if the weather goes awry. But we're anticipating hopefully good weather, and we'll have tents up, plenty of team space, plenty of spectator space, and we're just excited to host another championship here and provide everybody with a good opportunity. So that's what I can tell you guys about it.
Denver, before you go ahead and unshare that here real fast, just, for ODAC fans, two things here real quick. We're expecting that you'll be allowed to have spectators there on campus, correct, for the championship?
That is correct. We are full spectators for all of our sporting events here at Bridgewater this year. We've even brought back tailgating for football, and homecoming weekend is going to be bananas, I imagine. So all three of our home meets this season, which includes the conference meet. So our meet on the 3rd will be permitted to have spectators. The preview meet on October 2nd will be permitted to have spectators, and then obviously the conference championship. And that's notwithstanding, any changes from the governor's office or anything, Department of Health with COVID as that continues to develop.
Sure. And before, just one last thing here, just some of the things here when we have the preview meet on October 2nd, and then a few weeks later we get to the championship. Any things you're looking for from the preview meet as far as course setup and what might need to be tweaked, that sort of thing, or impressions from the coaches after that event has competed?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly from the coaches in the conference that are going to be at either of our two home meets, we're definitely interested in feedback on the course and the condition of the course. We've walked it and marked it out. We're pretty confident that we've got the width of the course correct, so the runners have plenty of space, and we're meeting the basic NCAA specs in terms of how the course has to be set up. We're going to be pretty bare bones at the first meet. We're going to do the preview meet relatively close to what people can expect when they walk in for the conference championship. But the conference championship, we do expect to have it set up and look pretty professional and pretty legit. We again want the athletes to have a good experience, and we certainly want to put on an event that looks and feels a little more special, because we have not had a cross country championship since 2019 here in the conference. So as people have feedback for us and have input, I certainly welcome it. We've maxed our space out there in terms of what we can get out of the course and the area that we have to operate in. So, our facilities guys are great. They've been out rolling and cutting and making sure that the course is in good shape, and that it's going to stay in good shape between now and the conference meet. So.
Very good, Denver. You can go ahead and we can take that away and bring everybody back here onto the Zoom. And coaches, before we go ahead and move into the rest of the part, any impressions from you all on that course as we move into it?
I think a lot of good highlights. It's nice to see that we have a number of the same coaches that are still in the league, so a lot of familiarity with Bridgewater and the job they'll do hosting.
Absolutely. All right, and now the one thing that we have in this league here is we've got some high-profile teams, high-profile athletes, all looking forward to those championship opportunities and the opportunities to compete at some of those other meets that we mentioned here. As we take a look at the rankings that have come out by the USTFCCA, and we've got four teams on the women's side and 3 teams on the men's side, and then the regional rankings. But then we've got 3 teams that are ranked nationally inside of their top 35, both men and women combined. Washington and Lee, number 33 on the women's side nationally. On the men's side, you've got Lynchburg, number 9, and Washington and Lee, number 23. I mean, congratulations to each of you being ranked as high as you are, especially looking at Lynchburg, that program inside the top 10 nationally. Big opportunity for you there. Jake, I'm going to go right to you first. Talk a little bit about the feelings about being ranked that highly and why you think you guys are that high. How good are you this year coming in?
Oh, it's kind of crazy to think about when you miss a cross country season and you're not even a top 25 team in the nation 2 years ago, top 35 team, and you pop back in and all of a sudden you got a top 10 team in the country. And those guys 2 years ago weren't even sniffing the national scene. We didn't even have individuals on this team that were even thinking about that. So although it's awesome to see and it's great to be ranked that high, I also think experience goes a long way, and we got a lot to learn. We got a long way to grow to get to where we need to be by the end of the year. But I think our track season this past spring spoke for itself. What those guys laid down, they're definitely ready and physically capable. now we'll see how they adapted cross country and whether they can carry that over.
Yeah, Brandon and Mike, your teams both Washington Lee nationally ranked inside their top 35s. Talk about your programs here. What makes you guys ready to challenge for not just that spot, but maybe increasing upon your current ranking?
Yeah, I think Jake brought up a lot of good points about, where teams were evaluated this year based off of track season. And, he has two tremendous runners who are out front. I mean, there's not a lot of programs in the country that are returning two All-Americans who were All-Americans in the 5 and 10K the year before. So certainly a strong point of his team. And when I think about our returners of what we did on the track, this is the best top 5 returners that I've had of having 5 guys who ran under 15:10 for 5K. I mean, certainly sets us up well. I mean, keeps a tight pack together. And I think the exciting thing about our group is given a chance for, a number 1 runner to emerge. We've really kind of been missing a front runner on our team really since a guy like Max Strahler graduated within our program, but feel really good about our depth. It's nice to get the recognition that we had, but as Jake mentioned, we all still have a lot ahead of us this fall, but certainly from the history of the South region and the ODAC, I mean, just in the presence that we have now and we've had over the last 5 years, whether it be teams or individuals, it's certainly exciting. I mean, it's great for our conference and within the region to have this representation.
We're really young. Our senior class is our smallest class. I mean, the last 2 graduating classes were pretty big and had a huge part in our success in 2019. But we've got a lot of people that have regional level experience and some people back that ran in the national meet. I think our ranking's fair. I don't put much stock in the rankings. You got to get out there and race and prepare your team. I totally expect us to fall out of the rankings. We usually dip out, and we're not looking to run fast until October and November. So it's a long season, like everyone's saying. We got to keep people healthy and do the best we can to represent the conference and at the regional and hopefully national level.
Not to be left out of it are the regional rankings. We've got a part of this on the men's side. In addition to Lynchburg and Washington Lee being 1, 2, you've got Roanoke sitting there at 6. On the women's side, you've got Washington Lee, Lynchburg 2, 3, and then Bridgewater 7, Shenandoah 9. I mean, Andy in Denver, we've got you sitting right there. What makes your teams capable like that and to be positioned in the region? And do you think there's potential for you to even move up and challenge those higher spots within the South region?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I was actually kind of surprised, and I was just talking to Brandon about this before we got on the call this morning, to see our women in the rankings. I must have caught Andy on a good day with putting stuff together. But, we have a young team. I mean, I think everybody's talking about the experience piece. And, this is something I mentioned the other day in our own preview here at Bridgewater of our season. Not a single member of my women's team is, first of all, older than being a sophomore in college. We have no juniors and no seniors on that team at all. And none of them have run a collegiate cross-country race yet in their careers. Our freshmen came in last year. We opted to forego the cross-country piece and focus on track. So they got to get their collegiate experience on the track to begin with. And I think one of the interesting things with the way kind of COVID impacted the high school scene over the last year and a half, even for our freshmen coming in, they haven't really had a full cross country season in the same amount of time as our athletes have. So, I think it's hard to base things off of high school times and track times and the rankings are what they are, and it's great. It feels good on the front end. But like Mike said, I want to get out there and see what we can do. And if we hold that ranking and elevate ourselves, that's fantastic. That's certainly going to be our goal and continue to improve as the season goes on. But, if we fall out of it on our way to running better in October and November when it matters most, I'm okay with that at the end of the day. So I'll let Andy chime in here on his women.
Yeah, sure. So, to touch on all of that, I'm actually surprised putting the rankings together. I didn't get some text from Dager about don't even put my women in it. But, this is a tough year, for those rankings because we haven't competed in 2 years. The freshmen coming in, might have good track times, but so it's all a guessing game, and just trying to figure out, who looks good on paper. But I think as we all have now mentioned, nothing really matters until October, November. That's the goal. That's the purpose. That's when the championships are. So, having these polls here in August gives our SIDs something to write about, gives our fans something to read. But from the day-to-day coaching, training, competing, our girls are just excited to see what happens in October.
One of the places that I've been able to talk to some of the other coaches, I've talked with field hockey, football, men's and women's soccer, and volleyball, 3 coaches apiece, so 15 coaches. And we've tried to talk a little bit about the transition from what we had just this past spring into what we've got now with the fall. Now, maybe it's not quite the same for you all because you're used to having the transition of track seasons into the cross country season coming about. So you're taking the distance runners and moving them along. So maybe this question falls a little bit dead on that, but is there anything to what happened last spring that has changed anything about this fall with your athletes coming through? Maybe they're a little bit sharper. Maybe they're not as sharp. Maybe the fitness levels aren't quite there. Maybe they're a little bit higher. Maybe it's the fact that you feel like you have 2 freshman classes because last year's class didn't get to go through that initial preseason, but maybe they had a little bit of different instruction going through that fall period that we had where you could have some time based on what your campus regulations were. I'll open this one straight up. Is there any change or what's the comparison of coming in from last spring in a situation that was different with regards to COVID regulations to this year into a fall preseason for some of the athletes for the first time ×2 with 2 classes?
I think I can probably speak for everyone in the standpoint of just how we went about training. None of us had that fall season, so I think we all learned a lot in how we developed our athletes throughout last year. Most of us were able to start practice in maybe September last year, but just how we developed throughout the fall, we really didn't have that next race we were thinking of. I'm certainly reflecting on things about training that maybe I didn't do in a 2019, but I did in the fall of 2020, and I've learned from it moving forward. But I've also just in a lighthearted way, I found myself, giving my guys cross country reminders when it comes to a cross country meet and things we haven't done in 2 years as we're getting ready for this weekend.
Rebekah, you as well. You were going to mention something there.
Oh, I was just going to say, I just sense a greater deal of excitement from the athletes. They just seem very relieved to have a season on the schedule. And it's just been really awesome this year to be able to do more just team bonding, team culture type activities. And I think that goes a long way. Before the performances come, I just think focusing on the culture and the team building, I think that's going to go a long way. So I feel like across the board, all sports, everyone's excited to have a season on the schedule.
Well, I can tell you that we're excited to have you out there on the schedule as well. Starts as early as this coming Wednesday, September 1, with a couple of events going on that day, but then really continues pretty consistently throughout the fall leading up to the championships that we have at the end of the month. But another thing to think about is post ODAC. So we've gone through the ODAC kind of setup here of what the championship course is going to look like. But then 2 weeks after that, we'll be down in South Carolina at the Roger Milliken Center with, I think, Converse College and one of the sports commissions down there hosting the regional setup. But regionals is completely different this year, or at least has changed a little bit, with now at 10 teams, or at 10 regions, I should say, spread throughout the country. And I'll show up a little map here right now, but we've got 2 of you here, Brandon and Andy, on the men and on the women's side, talking about the differences in what can happen here with the regional setup and what it looks like for national qualification. So let's start on the women's side with Andy. Talk about some of the differences here, or just some of the changes that have gone along with switching the regions, as I go ahead and show the map for everybody to see.
Sure. So I think a lot of the similarities are going to cross over both the men and the women. But as you can see, the biggest change there is that light blue Texas at the bottom getting shifted off to the west. And I know that was a high point of contention at the last convention of the Texas schools felt like the Southeast was their home. And we had a lot of great relationships, still do, but that was part of the region, and having that shuttled off to the west removes a lot of the the Texas strong teams like Trinity, that have been growing programs, and certainly, in the top 10 rankings every year, as well as the Kentucky schools getting shifted up to the Great Lakes. So it's a significantly smaller geographic footprint now. We lost 3, maybe 4 of the perennial, top 10 teams are now in 2 different regions. So, but I think it balances the 10 a little bit better. So, we might see some fair competition where the 8 region model was certainly a lot heavier in certain regions over others.
Yeah, I think if looking at this from an all sport perspective, other coaches will realize that D3 realignment has been a overall goal over these last few years, not just with cross country, but we know that cross country is so different when it comes to how our regional system works comparative to other sports. And the general idea when it came to the Coaches Association working out with our coaching body, working out how these regions would work, and then what we proposed to the NCAA, and then the NCAA kind of change things around just a little bit, keeping same mindset, but for the most part, regions weren't that changed. It more came into the qualifying criteria, which I'll touch on. But basically across the board for the 10 region, it kind of levels out everyone around, a 40 team number when we go to averages overall. Adding Texas to the West was usually the smallest region, averaged it out. Same thing for us in the South. And you look at regions that were the Atlantic region and were the Mideast region, which was, the New York, New Jersey schools, or just the state of Pennsylvania, they were encountering situations where there could be, 80 teams that could be at a region meet. And there's really not a lot of courses in the country that can handle that. So now all of a sudden this shifts that to be a little bit more balanced across the board. Now, competitiveness, it certainly changes the landscape. We've gone from before where we had 2 automatic qualifiers from every region. So that was 16 teams. And to fill out the field of 32, there were 16 at-large bids that were selected by the NCAA committee. Now it's only the region champ from all 10 regions automatically qualify, still keeping the 32 teams, leaves it open to 22 at-large bids to make the field, with the increase being with the 2 extra regions, it's still the top 7 individuals, not from qualifying teams, still qualified to make a field of 294 from 280. And, I think we're going to see some changes around the country when it comes to, hopefully our region is represented well, both on the men's and women's side. But I think that there are some regions out there where some heavy hitters have left the region just on where the split was geographically, that may only have certain regions getting, 1 team out of the region, and not having teams that are eligible for at-large. And I know that coaches around the country, not just the ODAC, who feel they're going to be in those positions, thought about that when they were trying to plan out their schedule for this fall.
And it's important to note that aside from the 1 team that is the champion and the 7 individuals, at least not on that team, there's no prescription for each region must have X amount of teams coming through, right? You can have just the 1 automatic from any 1 region, and 1 region could be well represented getting, this isn't going to happen, but just for argument's sake, 4 at-large bids in addition to the champion, correct? There's no prescription.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there can be some regions that will definitely get, a 5th place, a 6th place team will be, still have a very strong resume heading into selections. Yeah, it's going to be interesting how it plays out. And I think there's certainly, just like any year, there'll be upset coaches when it comes to the end of the year, but hopefully our ODAC schools are on the right end of that.
Well, with it being a big stake for us figuring out who's going to qualify from the ODAC to head to Louisville for the national championship at EP Tom Sawyer Park out there, what does the regional course look like as we kind of segue in here to the finish of our discussion? What does that regional course look like, and how do you think the ODAC athletes are gonna not just participate but compete and be toward the top of the region here as we get to the South region rankings?
Jake, you want to lead this one off?
I mean, I've never been to the course myself, but talking to friends in the coaching community, that it seems like it's a pretty quick course, pretty fair course. And just looking at the regional realignment, regionals now, especially for a team like us that's ranked ninth in the nation and expected to win the region, there's a lot more pressure there. There's a lot more pressure on the meat of the season, going places and placing well to pre-nationals or a big interregional meet to ensure that not everything is on the line that given day. And it's putting more pressure on teams to go out and compete outside of their region to bolster resume. And I think that's going to be important as we move through this year, is just kind of seeing how that shakes out for our region and hopefully garnering a little bit more respect for the South region. You know, I know that's been an issue in the past.
And I know we'll be getting back up into Virginia here shortly. I can't remember if it's next year or the year after that Christopher Newport will host again. Do we have anything on the slate here for an ODAC school looking forward to? I think Shenandoah has kicked the tires on this before, correct, Andy?
Yeah, we hosted in 2015. We did bid for, I don't remember if it was the 2019 or the 2020 that ended up not happening. We have some stuff we're working on out there, continuing to make the course bigger and better. So, we'll see what the administration here wants to do.
Very good. Well, coaches, I want to thank you for joining me on a new type of content here that we've got to preview the upcoming 2021 fall cross country season. We look forward to seeing you get out there. Best of luck to each of you and your programs as we move forward through the campaign.
Thank you.
Thanks, JJ.
Thanks, JJ.
Thanks, JJ.